What is going on, guys? I hope you guys are all having a fantastic day and can hear us today. We're going without our producer today, so bear with us as we're messing with some different technical difficulties throughout the day, but we're here for another episode of First Blood. We're going to be talking about all the craziness of matches yesterday, talking about those a little bit and highlighting some key moments that we both saw throughout the day, and then talking about, obviously, the Optic Texas. We get to see them play again, continue the fire from Major 1, and continue to talk about some of the matches. But whole chip, just right off of the top, what were you feeling about yesterday, man? I know I was tweeting out saying my pick'ems were chalked, and it's so hard to figure everything out. So how are you feeling about a few of the things?
You know, and maybe we talk about this to start the show, because I thought this may have been one of the spicier takes that I've seen on Twitter in a while. And I kind of thought this because I agreed with it in some ways and disagreed with it in others. I don't know if you saw Parasite's tweet yesterday, but his whole take on Vanguard is the biggest coin toss COD or whatever that we've had in a while. And I don't really know how I feel about the take, because I think the instant knee-jerk reaction to the results yesterday, seeing like LAG 3-0, London 3-0, Thieves with a sub, like Seattle beat Atlanta, it does kind of feel like on any given day, anybody can beat anybody. But using the term coin toss, I think may be a little egregious, because I feel like the teams that won yesterday played the game better. It's wild, because the games are, I think, just generally every match is just super unpredictable.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I think this is a conversation I've had a few times. And it's like, this brings me back to something you and I haven't even spoke about. It's like basically going into these new Call of Duties, and since the CDL kind of franchising became a thing, you're creating rosters before the game even comes out, right? Like these organizations and teams and players or whatever, they're like, okay, based on Cold War or based on years prior, we think these 4 players would work well together and be good. And I think that we've seen kind of throughout this year so far, some teams struggle with maybe those 2 ARs or that slower play style. And you don't know what the game's going to be like, right? Like this game comes out, we've talked about it a lot. Like it's crazy, it's fast. There's a lot that happens, a lot that goes on. And I think it maybe takes some time for players and teams to adjust, I guess, to the way the game's played. But overall, it seems like I can see where Parasite's saying, like, it seems like a coin flip. But I don't know. It seems that the better teams, and no matter how bad the Call of Duty is or whatever people think, there is a right way to play it. There's a wrong way to play it, right? And I think we're seeing these teams take advantage of a situation that they're put in, right? They're figuring out the ways to play the game and make it work no matter what the circumstances are. So hats off to some of those teams. But we can kind of transition this into the talking point of some of these matches from yesterday. You and I, we were wrong on a lot of the predictions. We weren't right. I thought I would see a lot more from some specific teams, but just kind of hopping into a recap of some of the first match from yesterday. Paris Legion versus LAG. You and I both had Paris in our predictions. We were both wrong, unfortunately. And I don't know, talk to me a little bit about the match. I personally didn't like what I saw out of Paris. It seemed like they got some growing pains, but it's early and I'm not, fully chalked on the team yet, but kind of talk to me what you thought about that match.
Well, I mean, we definitely, I think, overgassed, and I say we, mostly me. I think I overgassed the Jimbo hype train just a touch. I mean, he definitely looked much more nervous yesterday than I had seen him play in challengers. I felt like he was not, like, I think yesterday when we were going into it, we were talking a lot about how, like, Jimbo and Sib had a very similar play style when they had played together on Atlanta Faze Academy, where it just felt like they were going to go out there and chow everything. And I felt like Jimbo was being almost too cautious yesterday. And I think the other thing on top of that was, I'm wondering where this move is, and was there a team consensus on this move? Because it did not feel like Temp was vibing all that well in the comms yesterday with this squad. So it didn't feel like anything was going right. And on the opposite side, Slasher and Gunless had huge series after we had just got done criticizing them from their previous matchup this weekend. So it's just, I think, a little bit of are the girls going to get consistent? And also the same place, like, is this Legion team actually formulated the correct way? Maybe they just need more reps. It's kind of hard to say right now, but it definitely felt like there was like a chemistry thing that was off with Legion, when I think both of us expect them to come in with kind of a honeymoon period, especially with how well Gravity played over the major.
Yeah, and like I was hearing some things on the back end to back up Paris. Like I heard they were playing really well in scrims. Like things were going well with this new roster. So I had high hopes for them. They come out yesterday, they get 3-0, and like we talked about it yesterday. Like this is a must-win match for Paris. Like we were talking, like they could potentially go 4-1 in their group stage, and now it's not going to be the case unless they were to win out from this point on. But it's like when you're looking at the league, you're looking at the way it's structured, you're looking at the format. It's like these league matches mean so much in terms of like your longevity as a team and success. And it's like, if you're not performing in the league when you're supposed to, you're going to find yourself in the losers bracket of the major, and you set yourself up kind of for failure in a way. So I would like to see Paris have a turnaround. They got some hard matches coming up like we spoke about, but it's very doable matches compared to the latter half of the season for them. Then from LAG's standpoint, right, like they look good. And I feel like Slasher and Gunless, like they would eat up a team like this. Like we were giving them a hard time yesterday, as I feel like they deserved it. But like these guys play really well against teams that are going to play super aggressive and kind of not so fundamentally well. So big bounce back from LAG. They looked really good. It was a quick 3-0 out of them. They were, like you said, an insane series out of Slasher. For him having some poorer performances and saying he can't really get in his groove. He had a 1.45 yesterday overall, which is nuts. And then on the backside, Gunless with a 1.38 as well. So when your ARs are dropping 7+ K damage throughout the series with a lot of kills and absolutely frying, like you're going to be happy if you're an LAG fan. So good bounce back from them. I'm interested to kind of see what Paris Legion we get. I hope they don't take a step backward, and I hope they actually can improve and be one of the top, like maybe top 8 teams throughout the league. But I don't know. We talk about it all the time. The league is so competitive. And there's no room for like messing up and not playing to the top of your game. You don't really have time to kind of be on a losing streak or anything like that. So excited to see where both of these teams end up. I still think LAG is one of the bottom teams right now, but a good bounce back match from them for sure to handle business versus Paris Legion.
I think the question here, and kind of stemming in the conversation that you just pulled up talking about, like teams making these rosters formulated before the game even comes out or even before any significant time has been played in the game. I guess I'm curious mostly like why teams like this have not given themselves at least a look with a dedicated substitute player. Like, why is it that Paris just go in with a 4-man roster and then hope things work out okay? Because it feels like when you see teams, and I think the most egregious, like if you take the polar opposite end of the spectrum, like you go back to Toronto Ultra and Modern Warfare, literally a 10-man roster. And at the beginning of the year, they had subbed out, I think, almost everybody except for Mayhem. I think Mayhem was the only player who didn't actually see game time. Brack too, I guess. But like, why not give yourself the ability to have somebody that you can swap into that position if things do start going poorly? Like we saw it even with Toronto, like Hixie, European style player, but he gets moved in to be close to this Toronto team and something goes haywire. Cammy gets sick, and guess what? Hixie's there to sub in and they still do well. So I guess I'm just curious on why these teams aren't taking a bigger chance of actually bringing in a dedicated substitute.
No, I completely agree with you. And like, I think what you said, Toronto is the only team that's actually done it every year so far. Like, they didn't do it. Oh, I guess they did kind of do it this year too. In Cold War, they even had it to where Insight was their only sub. They had a 4-man roster, but Insight was still getting reps through practice. Like when they were scrimming and whatnot, he was still playing the game. And I remember I was talking to Methods about it. Like one day Insight would be playing for even Bance or Kleenex or whoever. Like he was getting reps with the roster in case something were to happen to where he needs to be comfortable with playing with them. It's very smart. I'd like to see some teams kind of maybe include that into their roster decision. And like you said, a team like Paris, why even jump on like a 4-man roster right out the gates? I think it would have been, what if they did something like this where they announce like whoever's playing the best, or they just pick their team based on how like the challenger scene's going, because challenger starts before the pro league starts. So like you technically have time to see and kind of scout or maybe get an idea of who you want to play and then kind of pick those other players up from there. So I definitely think it would be interesting to see if they were to try something like that. But like you said, we've only seen it from Toronto Ultra so far in the league, which it's paid off for them. Hey, they're a top contender team, so I like it.
I think it's especially true for Paris. Like, they have yet to put together a roster that we look at the beginning of the year and are like, oh, this roster is going to be good. Like, I think we always walk away from this Paris Legion roster with more questions than answers. And I don't know, man. It's just, why not give yourself some sort of a bailout? And I guess, there is the business side of it and everything, but I feel like if you're Theory and Apox, you've got to be fighting to have a 5-man roster just to make sure you've got some sort of escape plan in case something does go wrong. So that way you're not bringing in Gravity 3 days before Major. You're not bringing in Jimbo 3 days before the next qualifier. So you actually give some people in that camp a chance to get comfortable, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I think that's where a lot of like controversy goes on, like you said, on the business side of things. It's kind of been a thing for the last few years. Like Paris Legion have just continued to pick up like these bottom, like they'll have like the last scraps basically. They'll pick up the last people that are available and kind of sign them to that minimum, and it's kind of been a known thing for years going on. So I would definitely like to see some change there, and like you said, at least have a substitute on the backside of things. I'm not sure. Quote me if I'm wrong, but I know Paris had substitutes in MW. I don't think they had them in Cold War because they just made straight up changes. And the same thing going into this year. I think they've I think they've kind of just used their coaching slot to kind of put into that substitute role. Then they'll pick up players as time goes on. But I don't know. Hopefully, like I said, they can turn it around. They got some easier matches, I would say, compared to some of the rest of the schedule. So we will see what these teams continue to do. Good bounce back, though, like we said, out of LAG. And excited to see what they can kind of do in the weeks to come. But kind of transferring from that, if you have any more thoughts on them, that's kind of all I have on both of those teams so far.
It's just tough because, I think if we're doing our due diligence here, you have to look at what both teams have for the rest of this qualifying stage. Like, we're going to talk more about what Paris has today as they have to play up against Minnesota. But for a team like LAG, how convinced are we that they can come out and finish off their group with any other W's? Because they play Seattle next week as their only match. And then they have Thieves and Texas in week 3. So for me, it's like, this is a nice, like, okay, we get some favorite built back behind us again after we had come off not winning a single hard point at all throughout the major and really not even coming close to winning a hard point, save the Tuscan that they played versus London. That feels good, I think, to come out and get a 250 to a 111 win. Like, that's got to feel really confidence building. And I think just on top of that, their Search and Destroy, which has been arguably their weakest mode this year, to look that comfortable on Desert Siege, which is a map they had not played a lot, that's got to do well as far as you thinking that your map pool is going to be bigger than you'd normally think, just based on the results they've had in the past. But I mean, I don't know. Do you think there's any other wins built into this roster for the rest of this stage? Because they've got, I mean, it's Seattle and then LA Thieves and Optic. Like, that's not exactly what I would call the easiest run, especially with Seattle doing what they did yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only hope you have is like you're playing kind of a broken Seattle, I guess. Like, do you really, maybe we can go into that in a little bit, obviously talking about their match, but like they haven't looked good. They've beaten Faze like the last 3 times. Is there that curse? Is there that whole thing? Like, we can talk about that in a minute, but like they really honestly like haven't looked. I'm still not sold on them, right? You get a bounce back game, but we'll see what they can do as time goes on. But I think for LAG, like I said, you play that Seattle team, and then like depending on how LA Thieves look, they can be in a rough patch here. Like, they get 3-0 by London. Again, we'll talk about that here in a minute. But it's just like they haven't looked good, and then they play Optic later today. Again, we'll talk about that. And it's like they could be a vulnerable team here in a minute, depending if LAG can catch some fire. Maybe they get the Seattle win. I don't see them like guaranteed loss here versus 100 Thieves, but we'll see as time goes on. I think they definitely have their work cut out for them, though, in terms of a rougher schedule for sure.
Fair enough.
Let's see, though. I think that's kind of my final thoughts on that match, and then that kind of leads us over to what I was just saying. Yesterday we saw some questionable ones, and like I said, my pick'ems were absolutely chalked. I'm not sure still if it's the Vanguard effect or if it is just these teams being better than I expected them to be realistically. And that leads us into our second match of the day. That was the London Royal Ravens versus the LA Thieves. This one was the Paul X show, and nasty, man. They were absolutely frying. It was really good to see. And I'm so happy. Like, I've been following Paul on Twitter and like seeing his tweets and like support from his family. I knew the kid was going to go out there and do well. Like, I had no doubt in my mind. You and I talked about how good he is. So to see him go out there and perform and win, this for me got him on a league team. In my opinion, I think that him frying, beating, I think the first win was like whatever. This is like we're gonna win no matter what, And this one was like because it's just New York, right? It's like they haven't looked good. They're changing the roster around, like whatever. This is like, okay, we just beat a top 4 team. I'm not even on this roster, and we did it and easy. Like, it was easy. Like, we really didn't struggle too much, and he fried individually. So that was really good to see out of Paul X, and I hope he can get a spot in the league for sure.
He deserves it, man. I mean, even in the little roulette wheel that was the London roster at the beginning of the year last year, where Parasite was in, then Paul was in. Like, I thought both of those players played pretty darn well considering the circumstances. But I'd said this in the best of 3 pod. I'll say it again. There is no way in hell that you could ever go into looking at Afro, Zero, Nasty, and Gizmo and think that this team was going to be bad. They're so good, especially with the last 2, Nasty and Gizmo, what they had done throughout Challengers in the last couple of years. But, dude, I thought the desk hit on it where no one was talking about Nasty in particular, which has kind of been like the story of Nasty, just generally speaking, with the teams that he finds himself in, just simply because of the role that he runs. But to see how Nasty and Paul worked together yesterday, that was, I think, the most inspiring thing about this series in particular. Regardless of the 3-0, regardless of who won and lost, just watching Nasty and Paul work together goes to show that these 2 guys know exactly what they need to do awareness-wise to be putting themselves in the best positions possible. A lot of the time it feels like Nasty's kind of the setup guy for an Afro or a Gizmo, but yesterday watching those 2 kind of play off of one another, it was like they've been playing together for years. Like, there were so many brilliant moments. So to see both of them have that awareness without a lot of time together, I think is probably the most incredible thing about what London did yesterday versus the Thieves team that, to be fair, like, Draza did not play well yesterday. I think that was kind of the first player you look at to sit there and say, like, oh man, like, LA Thieves are not really giving themselves a chance because, you know, Draza had a really poor start to the opening hard point and then even had just a really rough time through the control from start to finish. Never really gave them a chance in the respawns, but I still think that a lot of that comes off the fact that Nasty and Paul together were taking away so much key space in both of the Gavuti respawns we had.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree 100%. It made me laugh seeing GG Breaking Point's tweet. They said, don't yell Scump or Scump Jr. on Gafu. So that had me cracking up laughing yesterday. But I definitely agree. There's always like someone on each roster that will kind of fly under the radar and not really get as much love or as much gas as some of these other players. So to see Nasty step up in a big way throughout the entirety of the series was awesome to see. He was absolutely playing his best Call of Duty. And like you said, him and Paul were just going back and forth. And that really shows how good these players are. When you can kind of mix and match players or vibe off or play off of whatever, like, guy you've never even played before. I would argue that Nasty and Afro have never played, or I guess Afro's played with him, but Nasty's never played with this guy ever, probably in his entire career. Maybe an 8s or something like that. But before this year, never played together, doesn't really know him. And for them to play that well individually and just as a team and to get that 3-0 was awesome to see. But on the side of LA Thieves, like, they were very underwhelming. Like, I was a big fan of LA Thieves. So. I've been gassing them up a lot. I was like, this team's the real deal. They're really good. They got unlucky at the major, and, like, it is what it is. Like, they get reverse swept by Faze and get knocked up out of here. But, like, I was, like, high on them. And, like, you saw Cap tweet out, Josiah tweet out, Kenny tweet out, like, Josiah said it was one of the worst series he's had. He couldn't get a kill. And then you saw Cap and Kenny say something along the lines of, like, bad practice leads to bad results. And it's like,
yeah, I saw that.
What? Yep. So that question, like, instantly in my head, I start thinking, so, okay, number one, did we get egos? And, like, we're not really trying as much because we thought we're so much better than some of these teams. And in scrims, you play respawn, so hard point and control, obviously. It's like, so they're the best hard point team. Everyone's gassing them up as, are you just not trying as much in scrims? And, like, practice is getting lackluster. You just starts getting like that trolley vibe. And then kind of, you chalk it up as, oh, this team sucks. Because I've been there before. When I was competing in my days, like, we would have those scrims where we would get on, we'd be laughing, we'd be giggling, and like, we'd either beat teams or we'd lose to teams. You'd be like, oh, that would never happen in a match, or, oh, that would never happen. It's like you start chalking it up, and, like, we've seen times and instances, like, bring it back to World War II when Rise was the best CTF team in the game. They literally wouldn't practice a certain map because they thought they were so much better than teams at it, they wouldn't play it. And it's like, it just leads me to worry, like, I hope that's not the case. I hope that they were just having some bad practice or maybe getting smoked, and it is what it is, because I think this 100 team is the real deal, and they can be a top contender or even win a championship this year. But I don't know your thoughts on it. It leads me to worry when you see tweets like that. That's how it goes in my head, at least.
Hopefully it's a little bit of a wake-up call, because obviously today is a very difficult test we'll talk about later. And then on top of that, the rest of their schedule is by no means easy, especially if Minnesota is improved. That would be the next opponent they play is the RØKKR. And then you've got Gorillas in Seattle to finish things off in week 3. But I think for this team overall, the way that I look at this, and these are takes that I've had before, and I still stand by them, even though it was a rough performance from Draza yesterday. I still think that, generally speaking, Draza has the potential to be an MVP form, like for not just the team, but potentially for the league. He's shown his ability to do it, but I think there is some sort of a mental blockade going on with this team right now. Just watching them move around the map yesterday, there were just way too easy breaks coming in from London, start to finish. The Search and Destroy, I thought they actually looked pretty good overall. Just London was able to sneak away a couple of key moments, but that's where I really want to see this team improve on. Hardpoint losses are going to happen. You're not going to be a perfect hardpoint team every single time. And the Gavudu control, there were some good moments from them. But I thought the improvements that they showed on Berlin in particular, a map that they've really struggled with, I thought was encouraging. It just comes down to, I think Draza had a bad series. I don't expect him to have series like that pretty much from here on out. And hopefully after that point, you can keep improving that search, because I expect the hard point and the control will be where it should be, which is still really solid, even though they've lost the last two hard points on Gavuda that they've played it in a row. So I don't know. I think there's some things to be desired for Thieves, but I wouldn't put this into the panic mode situation yet. Even if they were to lose today, I still wouldn't panic too much. It's still a young season, and I think there's still some growing that this team needed to do in the first place. So a loss is not the end of the world.
I completely agree with you. My only worry is that you see a spiral sometimes in these teams, and it's like,
that's true.
They have
That's
a very hard match today. It's not an easy. They got Major 1 champions, Optic, playing against them later today, and we can kind of talk about that. But as we talk and get into the matches, but it gets to that point where you start playing, you get a few losses, maybe the confidence and practice starts going rough. So I don't know. We'll see. Overall, London's look fantastic. LA Thieves, big wake up call for them, and they got to kick it into high gear today in a very hard match that we can discuss in a little bit. That's kind of my final thoughts on those guys. And that will lead us. Go ahead.
If we have the ability, I don't know if you have the ability to throw up a solo cam real quick, but there's this one moment that I really want to highlight for London on the control in particular that I think was, again, just kind of going to show the synergy and like why Paul is such a good player. I don't know if you have the ability of doing that or not.
Let me see if I can just add you into the. No, that's not going to work. You want me to do your solo cam, right? Like this?
Yeah.
Then can you switch the. Will it be able to pull up the VOD on your screen?
Yeah. I got you. Okay. So does that show all
right?
Yep,
you're still up there. Yep, you're good. As long as
Sweet.
chat thinks it's cool. You should be good.
Let me hide this taskbar real quick. Whatever, I'll just play it. This is one of the moments that I'm talking about with this London team when it comes to like this late break that they pull on the A control zone. This was such a huge break coming through for LA Thieves. And the thing about this last second break for London is look how they start to set this all up. There's this moment that comes into play where they've got everything that you could possibly want in terms of map positioning, right? Like you've got topside ring, and they're going to be able to use this as a position to kind of block. But what you're really, I think, interested to see here from these guys is watch how Zero clears off the top before the SMGs underneath start to actually hit forward. This is such a cool little moment that I thought was just really representative of why this London team is so good, because you've got Paul who's clearing out top gun, and then as soon as Zero watches over and gets the information on where Draza is, Afro comes in, and then Nasty hits from the opposite side, and they get this really fluid pinch just because of how they're clearing space and waiting. Like it's really, really awesome to see them make plays like that, where I feel like for a lot of teams, they would just kind of go and run, like especially from Paul's position. I feel like a lot of teams would just see this as like, okay, I've got this. I'm just going to immediately come back around and pinch and give away that position, where you actually have him kind of sitting and waiting. That opens up space for Nasty to come in freely, and then Zero at the top allows a chance for Afro to come in around the back. It's a really cool little synergistic moment, and it's something you would not normally expect for a team that is playing with a substitute with not a lot of time together, like formulating those plays. So I think it goes to show that the system that they're putting together is 100% brilliant, and the protocols that they have in place for retakes, that's why I think they're so good at breaking hard points, and also obviously showing a lot of success in what they're able to do for control takes too. It's really, really good, and I think that 3-0 for London says a lot about what this team is going to continue to do when Gizmo comes back. So I'm pumped about this team, man. I think they're super good.
No, I completely agree. And that everything you just broke down right there makes me think of, I don't know if you saw Trey's tweet after the match. he was like, it was a picture of him with his feet kicked up on the desk, and he was just like, me getting hard carried by my teammates, just IGLing. And it's like, they obviously do trust the system that he is involved, like put for them. And I know Trey is a very vocal player. He's obviously very out there as far as like how he wants to play the game and how he teaches these young guys that came up through challengers to play. So shout out to these guys. They seem very coachable, and they obviously trust their veteran and Trey to kind of lead them and guide them to success. But like you said, they've looked really good. I am honestly shocked to see them continue to keep up like their consistent level of play with a fill-in, and then even at the major and whatnot. So I'm excited to see Gizmo get back in the lineup with these guys and see what they can do over some time. But that kind of puts us over to our next match of the day, and this one was the one we got correct, but man, it was a nail biter. Very close series. In Toronto Ultra versus the Minnesota RØKKR. It was a fun one to watch. It just like, to me, it's like, I don't know. I instantly start thinking like RØKKR. We spoke about it yesterday, and we're like, okay, we need to see these guys like have a big win today if it's gonna kind of bounce back for them. And it's like they're just such a weird team. Like they always talk about like we need to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Like we're so close, and I agree with that 100%. But so close, you're still so far away. Like you're not winning the series. You're not like, I don't know. It just like worries me a little bit. I think like what you said, like we've kind of seen this in years past. I think Preset did look good on a sub. I think Attach was looking good in that AR role, uncomfortable. But overall, Toronto Ultra, they hadn't won a hard point. They were 0-8 in it. They took both hard points in this series pretty easily too. It wasn't like it was like some nail biter games. I think the first one was like 250 to, what was it, 189 or something like that.
Oh, that was a Tuscan that was like 250, 150.
Yeah, then the other one was, I think it was 250. Let me pull it up. 250 to Tuscan.
I mean, it was about 100 points.
Yeah, it was like 150. Exactly. Pretty sure you're right. So yeah, it wasn't really too close on some of these maps that we've seen a lot mix here. Like they handled business. Props to Toronto Ultra. They bounced back. They look fluid. They look sound. So I was excited to see them kind of get back in their groove, and they're beating a team that you could argue is a middle of the pack team. So I think that's a good win for Ultra.
I think so too. And I think the biggest thing about this Toronto team, why they're going to continue to be a threat, is that I would say they're arguably one of the more consistent teams when it comes to what they're able to put together on control. Not a lot of sample size, or at least that I can think of when we've watched them play Gavudu, but like their Tuscan is really competitive from start to finish. So I think if you see teams like Toronto, where currently by statistics speaking, like they are now currently the 6th best statistic control team, I still think if you find yourself in the top half of the league when it comes to map number 3, you're going to be dangerous. I think their search and destroy is not nearly as definitive as I think their record shows, because all of it comes on Tuscan right now. But I think, and someone had put this in the chat earlier, like if Toronto finds a way to get more consistent across the board on the hardpoint maps that are currently available, this team becomes another top 3, top 4 easily, no problem. Week in, week out, major in, major out, doesn't make a difference where. Because I would say out of all the teams that are out there, in the middle of the pack or struggling with hardpoint, at least Toronto has significant playtime on the entire map pool. Like they don't have a hard veto. You've got a lot of other teams that will still hard veto something out. So I think this Toronto team could still be very dangerous. I think the major was a little bit wonky for them for many reasons, but I think you go back, you relearn, you figure stuff out, you keep your search pretty sound, you keep your control super consistent. This team can still be a top 4 team, no problem.
No, I definitely agree with you. I think you hit it all perfectly. I'm kind of, like I said, I don't know. I just want to see more from this RØKKR team overall, and I think Toronto Ultra, like you were saying, has looked really good, and I'm excited to see kind of where these guys land. But I don't know if you've noticed this too. I don't know if you hinted at this, but like the Tuscan S&Ds, man, the comebacks just seem to be real. Like these 5-0 starts. For real. Like I don't know what that is. It blows my mind every time I see it. Like I swear a team goes up 5-0 and search, they go all the way to 5-5 somehow. It like seems that it continues to happen over and over again. And I don't know. They shut it down though. Minnesota RØKKR handled business, and like you kind of talked about too, they've been a good search and destroy team. So that's always good to see out of those guys. Yeah. They look comfortable, especially sometimes you see it. Like I remember this brings me back to Black Ops 4. Like when Optic switched roles, something along the lines of this, like you saw them struggle in search and destroy. Cause like when you go from running an AR all the time in search to now running a sub, it changes your game completely. All the routes change, like your whole setup changes. Like let's just break down Tuscan, for instance. Say Attach was the bomb carrier, maybe. Like I don't know if exactly if he was, but like say he was running the bomb here. It's like now he's not going to run the bomb with an AR, you know what I mean? So it was good to see them kind of bounce back in that search and destroy. And like you said, I think they just got to iron out the kinks and get the flow. But most importantly, they just need a win under their belt, in my opinion. Like, I think that it's just important to kind of get that rhythm and that mojo and that swagger back as a team. So hopefully they can bounce back. I like this team so far still, and I don't think I have to worry about it too much with Attach going to the AR. They gotta get some more practice under their belt.
I think the biggest thing when we were talking about it over the course of the last 2 days was like, if this rule swap doesn't work out for Minnesota, how do you change the tides of what the season is starting to brew towards? And I know that we started talking about potential of roster changes. People in chat were asking questions about, does Lucky or Real come in? I think with the performances we had yesterday and their ability to come out today versus Paris, and really from the rest of this stage, they've got a pretty softball schedule. You get a couple of wins. You try to avoid that lower bracket. You do well at Major 2 with this rule swap. I think everyone starts to feel much more comfortable going into that lengthy midseason break. So I think this is an important stage for Minnesota, but I do think that off of the one sample size that we got of the rule swap from yesterday, I think that RØKKR fans can feel a little bit more at ease to seeing all 4 of these players sticking around for the rest of the season, or at least through the rest of the stage. So I'm pumped for them. Hopefully they figure things out today.
No, I definitely agree. I think something too we haven't really hinted at or talked about. I think obviously as the seasons go on and more teams like start to kind of develop their rosters or figure out their things, you start to kind of finally understand where everyone lays as far as like power rankings.
Exactly.
So I feel like we're getting a handful of teams now that are sitting at that bottom 4. And for Minnesota RØKKR, I think they're just above it. So I don't think you have to worry, like you were saying. If you're a Minnesota RØKKR fan, I think you're in a good spot. I think we've talked about it as far as like, I don't quite put them in the bottom 4 yet. I think with the way we saw Paris play, I think I got New York and even Seattle and Paris down there. Then you can argue some.
Seattle down there.
Yep.
Oh man.
Well, it'll lead us into our next match. We can talk about it for sure. But I think that for
on pins and needles.
for them, it's I don't know. We'll talk about it in a minute. But those are kind of my thoughts on that match. And then I don't know if you had any more you wanted to talk about specifically on those guys. I think we kind of hit it for the most part.
Yeah, no, I think so. I think it's an encouraging series for both teams. Toronto for getting the hard points figured out, and Minnesota showing at least some promise with the role swap. So that was kind of my full take on the series at large.
Yep, I completely agree. And then this leads us into the best series in the entire day, which yesterday I stated would be the worst. We both had Atlanta Faze winning this one 3-0, but for some reason, Seattle Surge as an organization has these guys' number. You heard Studdy and Lando say it yesterday. They met up in Major 5 of last year in Cold War. They beat them there. They beat them at the kickoff. Then you see flashbacks through the entire series of this one. It seemed like it was the kickoff all over again. Atlanta Faze started out hot. They were handling business as I thought they would on Bocage. I was confused on that map pick'em, but
I think it's just the veto process, man. The Seattle team hates playing Berlin, so I think that's probably part of the reason that you don't actually see them going back and forth, because you have to choose, like, do you want to play them on Bocage? Do you want to play them on Gavudu? I think that time they actually did veto out Gavudu, leaving Berlin open. But it's just tough when you have a team that has a hard set veto and you're dealing with a really strong Atlanta team that's good on multiple maps. But yeah, it was weird to see them allow Bocage through and not give them a look at Gavudu.
Yeah, I just feel like the way I don't know, at least when I competed, it's like, okay, you could argue that, or well, I think personally that Simp and Abizi are the best submachine guns in the entire game. I don't care what anyone says. People will probably argue Shotzi now, but I think those two are fluently sound. They're really good together. They have a lot of chemistry. If I'm going into this match, I'm like, look, I don't care how good I think my teammates are. Seattle Surge, I think we have better teamwork, and we're going to try and like outwork them on a bigger map. So I don't know. And like you said, they don't play Berlin much, but they came into the series map 4. They handled business. They looked really good. And like you get to the point where as Seattle, it's like, at this point, we really got nothing to lose. Like, we're literally 0-6 in our last 6 matches. Like, this is a series to turn around. Let's switch it up. Let's go. Let's get uncomfortable. Let's try something new and try something different. And I don't know. These guys continue to impress me, but also, like, I guess disappoint me. I don't know. I think the team at times in this series specifically, like, they look so damn good. It's weird, dude. That's why I had them the other day. But then, like, again, they just disappoint me. Like, versus Boston Breach, they get absolutely slammed, and Capsule looks like the greatest player of all time. So talk to me a little bit about your thoughts on these guys. I know you were saying that you don't think you see them in the bottom 4 still. So
I don't. No, even after the major performance, I didn't have them in the bottom 4. I think you saw so much promise from the roster early on that the things that were going wrong for them, you have to know that those are just look over the VOD, really look at those moments in detail. Why are they going poorly? And we fix it. So I think you see a lot about what the Seattle team is built from, not just from this series, but even in their losses that they've suffered, including the one versus Boston earlier in the weekend. I think you kind of look at that team and say, there are winnable moments that are here from start to finish. It just comes down to a couple of key mistakes that are really costing you. Especially, I think we saw that throughout some of those tight search and destroys leading up into the major. And then also what they were doing out in Berlin in particular looked a little shaky. And then you come out, you play Atlanta on 2 Berlins, and you look really good on both of them. So I think it's just a coachable moment from what we've seen for Seattle. It really wasn't a core problem, I think, with any of the individual members. I know that I was a little critical on what, I see out of accuracy every now and again, but I think the biggest thing that we hit on from before was Seattle Surge need to play with a little bit more patience. And I think we saw some really disciplined patience come out yesterday across the board from really all 4 members, especially in, as you would expect it to be, in the respawn. So I think for Seattle, that's encouraging stuff. And the fact that you took 2 search and destroys off of a very good Faze team, that is a big boost, I would say, to what your confidence is going to look like moving forward. Yeah,
and I hinted at it the other day too. Like, if you're a Seattle Surge fan, you're so happy with the way that one player has specifically been playing, and that's Mac. Like, he has been absolutely frying. And I said this the other day too. Like, I feel like through their losing spree, he's been the guy to step up for them individually. And it's like finally nice to see them get a win with him playing so well. He dropped a 1.2 yesterday with 100 kills in the series. He had the most damage on his team. Like, it was just really good to see out of their submachine gun player, him to kind of find that form and almost backpack the team through the series. Like, look, guys, I got this. He took over that game 3, I think it was, or was it game 4? Game 4, sorry.
Berlin.
Game 4, Berlin hardpoint. Like, that guy was making so many good plays, and as a top sub like in the game, you want to see that, right? He's making good fundamental plays, like we were saying. We were seeing good patience out of him all around the map. He was making good rotational plays, playing his life, popping 2 pieces, doing everything. You can't ask for more when your submachine gun is literally going 29 and 14 on Berlin hardpoint. That's the last thing like you really expect. You expect these guys to pop off on some of the smaller maps, but on an AR map like Berlin, it was good to see out of him. So shout out to that guy. He's been absolutely frying in their last like 5-6 matches. So good to see, like I said, if you're a Seattle fan. But on the opposite side of things, I know I've seen some different topics with FaZe Clan, some different takes and whatnot. And like for me, I saw RC's tweet, like GG's, whatever. We're so damn inconsistent sometimes. It is so annoying. And it's like for that, I like totally see it, but it's like I don't know what to pinpoint with this roster. Like, they look really good, but like I thought for me it was like, okay, they just lost Major 1, right? Like, these guys this is like the bounce back. I was saying it, like they're gonna come out like all guns blazing, they're gonna start frying, and it's like, I don't know, I didn't see, like you saw glimpses of it. I don't want to say I didn't see it, but it was like, it was just weird, I guess, for them to fall short to a team that was struggling so bad. They were literally on a 6 losing spree, and then they lose to FaZe. So, they beat FaZe. Sorry.
I think the biggest thing for this Atlanta team is just finding some consistency across the map pool at the moment. Like, I mean, this is the biggest thing. I think it also goes down to the chess game that both coaches were playing in the vetoes. Like, for Seattle, it's like, okay, do we want to take out a map that we've looked pretty poor on? Obviously, they could not figure things out on the Voodoo versus Texas at the major. They decide to take that off the table. They don't want to see Atlanta there. And, or not Texas, they struggled at Texas, trying to get into that match. And then obviously what they did versus Boston, not good. But then you give up the Bacage, and then you go into choosing Berlin, which is, I think, the most puzzling thing about this series, because Seattle has hard vetoed that map almost exclusively over the course of the year. But at the same rate, like, Atlanta also does not play a lot of Berlin hard points. So I think there was a little bit of that chess game going on. And when you start to see teams playing that chess game where it's not just getting rid of our worst, but trying to put teams on their more uncomfortable maps, I think that really goes to show that there is a lot of trust that the players are going to do it is whatever is there for them, as far as the protocols are concerned. But for Atlanta, like, outside of Bacage hardpoint and outside of like Desert Siege Search and like Tuscan Control, we really haven't seen them provide consistent results across the rest of the map pool. So I think there is something to be said about Atlanta needing to really expand their bounds when it comes to the rest of the maps that are currently available. I think in particular, we have yet to see them play Bacage, Search, and Destroy, which a lot of teams have been vetoing, to be fair, but I think that is something that you look at and say, maybe there's an opportunity here to really score up this map and keep it in our back pocket, because this is an Atlanta team that you expect to be great at search. And so far in the season, there have been some inconsistencies outside of the one map of Desert Siege that they really prefer. So I think it's just a getting more well-rounded if you're Atlanta moving forward.
Definitely agree. And like you could argue, like I just want to see like or imagine if they lost to 100 Thieves right at that major, like, and they bomb out there. It's like, and then they start this season or this set of qualifiers like with a loss right away. It's like, wow, everyone's sitting back like, okay, like Atlanta Faze is not Atlanta Faze yet, but I think that they'll figure it out. I'm not too worried about it. I think Study and Lando have them cursed for some reason. Honestly, that's what I'm chalking it up as. I don't understand how back to back times now they've lost the series. These guys are the same guys casting it, but like you said, if you're a Surge fan, it's good to see these guys forced a game 5 and they looked absolutely clinical. I mean, I love the plays. I was talking to you about it before the podcast kind of started. I loved all the plays I was seeing. That looked like well constructed S&D. All the play calls, everything that they were doing looked really fluent and really sound. So shout out to Seattle Surge winning them again. I see Study in the chase.
Yeah, he's losing his mind out there. You got him all turned.
No, but that's kind of my takes on all of that. I don't know if you really have any other ones. I think Atlanta will be fine. I'm just kind of I'm worried about the Surge still. I know they won and everyone's kind of like, oh, that's a good bounce back. But I'm curious to see how kind of they play out the rest of this stage. I think a lot of teams are getting better, and like I was saying, the bottom teams are being ironed out now. So it'll be interesting.
The thing about it too is Atlanta has a very tough road ahead of them too. Like they've got London, an improving Toronto that's going to get some extra reps before they see each other, and then they've got Florida, Texas in the last week, and that's a Florida team that we'll talk about against New York here in a minute. But that's a Florida team that I'm pretty hot on right now. So I don't think it's going to be a walk in the park for Atlanta. So definitely, I think this is going to be a tester as far as, can we improve in a relatively short amount of time? And I think just on top of that, it's just expanding the map pool a little bit more overall. So you're not just guaranteed wins on Bacage, Hardpoint, and Desert Siege Search. Try to get something else going on. Yep.
I agree with you. And then chat and everyone watching on YouTube, this will kind of lead us into our next set of matches for the day. And this will be the actual last day of matches and the last episode of First Blood for this weekend. Until the following weekend, again, we will be live. If you guys are watching live or on YouTube, we're live 2 hours before every single time that the CDL is live, talking about the pre-show and kind of breaking down these matches. Most importantly, that leads us into the first match of the day, Alan. That is Minnesota RØKKR versus the Paris Legion. Talk to me a little bit about what you think about this one. I got an interesting take here. I don't know if I'm the Paris Legion have upset me, and I don't know if I can if I can fully believe in this roster.
Emotionally upset you?
They've drained me. I had high hopes in this roster, and now I'm scared, honestly.
No, it's fair. I think, I value a lot into kind of what the map selection is going to look like when you're dealing with teams that are still kind of hard videoing out certain things, and I still put them on a relatively even playing field as far as like where in like the quadrants of ranking them tier wise that I have these two teams. I've got Paris obviously near the bottom, but Minnesota I still don't think is a guaranteed out of the bottom 4 yet. So for this one, I'm looking at the maps that are likely going to be for Search and Destroy. You can almost guarantee it. It's going to be Berlin, Tusk, and Search and Destroy because both teams either hate Desert or hate Bacage. It's been hard vetoed from Minnesota. It's been hard vetoed from Paris. Minnesota not liking Desert and Paris not liking Bacage. I think that should actually change, though, by the way, because I think putting Jimbo on a Search and Destroy map where he can run forward into something would be beneficial for them.
I agree.
This whole thing for Paris needs to be figuring out what this team is, though. That's the biggest problem, I think, for this Legion squad. It's not just where as a team do we feel comfortable on, but how do we even start to feel comfortable as a team? Because the comms yesterday did not sound like they were whatsoever on the same page. So a Minnesota team that just did a role swap they look comfortable with, Paris who's still trying to figure things out. I don't love Paris's chances in this match with Minnesota riding improved over their Toronto series they played yesterday.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And something I'm seeing in chat, and I saw a bunch yesterday, was I've always like been a firm believer of this, that sometimes the online league matches can have a little asterisk next to them just because of sometimes players' locations and different things like that. And just for this case, I do know that I want to talk about this because it's never spoke about really. Paris Legion, I know for a fact, is not. They're one of the only teams that is not in a facility. All 4 of them playing from the same location.
Dude,
So
what are they doing?
Yeah, so I've been on that side of things, and I've like last year when I was playing on Florida, we did that where we were all 4 split into 4 different areas. And something I want to say is that literally the league tells the team, if you are not going to locate all together, you are playing 100% at a disadvantage. They stated it. They've said it. They told me when I was on Florida last year, they're like, look, if you guys are going to choose to not play in the same spot or play in the same facility, someone on your team is going to be like on a rough ping. Like it's going to be way higher. Let's just say in this series, Minnesota RØKKR, like they're all in Minnesota. Then Paris Legion, I think Donnie's in Atlanta. Jimbo apparently is in Canada. Tom Gravity's New York. Then John, I think, is North Carolina by you. So
yeah, he's in Charlotte.
They're kind of all over the place as far as that goes. So people were saying that Jimbo was playing on a high ping yesterday. So that's just something I want to take note whenever you view this team, and even for myself included. But the thing like you pointed out, like the listening didn't seem good. There was definitely frustrations, as there should be with a new roster. But I think they just need to iron out the map pool, figure out what suits them, figure out how they can take advantage of now having this aggressive submachine gun player on their team, and really develop kind of what will work for them as time goes on. But for Minnesota RØKKR, I'm going to say it now, this is a must-win series for them, for longevity of the team, for success, and maybe arguing to see if they can win a championship this year. This is a must-win series. Like, you cannot go into this series and lose versus the Paris Legion. Like, it just can't happen. Like, you must handle business today. You came after a tough loss yesterday versus Toronto Ultra, arguably the better team right now in the current state of this game. And Paris Legion, I would say, is under them in the standings right now. So they need to win this series. If they don't win this series, I just have question marks in my head for Minnesota RØKKR and what they'll kind of do from this point on.
My biggest thing for Minnesota is what happens in the hard points. Because Search and Destroy, they're actually a really solid search team. They're actually one of the best. And let me see real quick. After Dallas, they're actually the best search and destroy team statistically right now in the CDL. So that's always great news.
That is good.
For all intents and purposes, watching what they were able to do, I know that they almost got full sailed, but the 5 rounds in a row that they won yesterday, I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. The biggest thing is what the hell is going on in hardpoint, because they haven't won one since they played LAG in the losers round 1 matchup. And then on top of that, all of their losses lately have been pretty significant blowouts across the board, every map. So for me, for Minnesota, I've got to see this role swap working out with good synergy of how we're going to play the map, whether it comes to setting up aggressive holds, which is something that I think they lacked on yesterday versus Toronto. And then just on top of that, what is our key focus when we're trying to break? Are we trying to play for a flip of the spawns, or are we trying to envelop and contain the hard point and break the hill from the front? Because depending on what maps we get, there is significant success that you can find by doing one or the other, not necessarily both. And I think that's one of the problems that we saw with them, specifically on Tuscan yesterday, was they were trying to do too much. I would love to see them simplify things down and really come out with a clinical 2 tiers of hardpoint. Set up good holds, set up and find a way to get solid attempts to contest and break from the front. No matter what hardpoints we go on to, don't try to do too much if you're Minnesota. Just get some legs underneath you, because the hardpoint has been very bad.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think going against this Paris Legion team, like, you're playing a super fast, aggressive team that's going to make the game hectic. Like we were talking about Jimbo yesterday. Arguably one of the fastest players so far that we'll get to watch. So I need to see Minnesota. Yeah, true. I need to see them come out and do their thing this series. I honestly want to see a dominant 3-0 win. Like LAG handled business yesterday. I think Minnesota RØKKR need to do the same thing. And I don't know. We'll kind of see how it goes, but that will kind of lead me. That's kind of both my points on both of those guys. If you have anything else, go for it. But that's kind of going to lead us to the predictions and who we think will kind of take this series. I'll let you go first, and then I'll bring my 2 cents from there.
Fair enough. I think that the performance yesterday from Jimbo and Gravity was extremely underwhelming. I don't expect significant enough improvement for them to have too much of a chance in this series. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt on one of the 2 respawns, whether it's the opening hardpoint or the control, but I've got this going 3-1 to Minnesota.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think Minnesota is going to lock down the searches, and I'm confident that they can steal a respawn or 2. I got them winning this series 3-1. I'll give Paris Legion a map just because I think they'll be able to get something under their belt after yesterday's bad performance. So I'm going to go Minnesota RØKKR as well, 3-1 here. And then that will transition things into our second match of the day. We got New York Subliners going up against the Florida Mutineers.
Man.
Alan, talk to me.
Florida, for the third year now in a row, is going to be the most difficult team in the CDL to predict. That is the only thing that I know about this team. It was impossible to predict this team in Modern Warfare. It was even more impossible to predict them last year, and this year looks like it's not going to be any different. This Florida team came out versus LAG and looked really confident in a couple of really difficult moments, mind you. Like that Bacage that we broke down yesterday on stream, it really comes down to the fact that, yeah, I think Florida got a little bit blessed with a couple of really easy late breaks against a disjointed Guerrillas team, but their ability to run through the Tuscan, win the round 11, and then show offensive success not once but twice on Tuscan control. I'm really high in this Florida team, but I've done this before here, Jerry, where I'll come in and say Florida's looking like the most improved team. They're looking like a top 4 option, and then they come out the next day and absolutely get destroyed. The thing about this matchup is this New York team is also just in a very vulnerable position to where I don't even know where you win maps if you're New York, because they still haven't won a hard point. Their search is still pretty atrocious. And if you do get a control, you can't win a series off of winning a single map. So I'm kind of curious, just I think largely to see if Florida will stay consistent. And then I have a hard time picking up where New York is going to win this series, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But I think if you're a Florida fan and have been for the last few years, like you said, this is the match that they end up losing. Like, no joke. Like, this, as a Florida fan, is like where you see the inconsistencies. They play a weird New York team right now who's in a really weird spot. They haven't been finding any success. They've yet to win a single hard point, which is the most mind-blowing thing to me in the entire world.
So puzzling.
But I think this is where you see New York win a hard point. I think really that this is a team that they could take a series or a few maps off of them and make it competitive, just because this right here to me reminds me of like an 8's lobby, right? We're talking about a chalk New York team who is like not really been performing at all, and you could argue is, like I've been saying, the worst team in the entire league and will probably go on to make a roster change. Then you got the Florida Mutineers who look really good at times. Like you said, everyone kind of thinks they're improving. They're on the verge of being, a top team and can compete for some of these championships. Then they lose to a team that is like middle of the pack or lesser than them. So I'm honestly, this reminds me of what Parasite was saying yesterday, a coin flip series. I genuinely don't know who to kind of bet on here and be like, oh yeah, this team for sure is going to win this series. Cause like, we know Crim and Clay are the goats of COD. Hydra's been playing really good throughout this time. Do we see Neptune and him finally kind of gel together and they put together for one series? And it's like, it's Call of Duty we're talking about. Whoever comes to play, if these guys come hot and motivated today and they're like, all right, look, this is where we actually put stuff together. Like, I remember seeing Clay's tweets after the major. He's like, I still got gas in the tank. Like, I want it. I want to win, blah, 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 blah. Like, I don't know. I just don't know if I can fully believe in New York yet, but I would not be surprised if they were to take this series.
My biggest thing here is, like, let's just look at the maps, right? Because here's the deal. New York hates Berlin for some reason. They don't play it on hardpoint. They don't play it on...
Which they shouldn't.
So I think you're absolutely right. But the thing about it is, you kind of have to veto Bacage against Florida.
Yep.
You cannot let Florida have their only hardpoint map, really. So if you veto that out, we have also not seen Florida play Berlin yet. That means that we could get a Gavudu Tuscan. And if that's the case, that's probably going to be the sloppiest Gavudu hardpoint that we've ever seen in the CDL this year, because both teams are atrocious at that map. And I think it's going to come down to the simple fact of, like, who is going to be able to run that 3AR setup, not just correctly, but I think more importantly, which of the solo SMGs are actually going to find success? Because we've seen Neptune just get put into a blender on that map, and it's just like, well, I don't ever want to see them play that map ever again after watching that happen. But on the other front, what kind of a style are we going to get from Vivid? Because I think he's kind of the X factor for Florida if we do get Gavudus in the map pool, because he looked great the early match that they had this weekend. But can he continue that against potentially a New York team that's going to be running 3 ARs from start to finish on a Gavudu hardpoint? That very well may be the sloppiest Gavudu hardpoint we ever see if they do play it, which I'm kind of expecting that they're going to.
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know. I could be completely faded when I say this. Has New York played Florida once this year?
No, they have not.
They have not. So here's my little hot take. I'm sitting here thinking about this. I don't care what New York's look like. As a player, when you get dropped or leave a roster and you get kind of the revenge tour versus the team. What if we see Neptune just have a series here? He plays with these guys.
Bro,
I don't know. I mean,
know.
I'm not like high on it, I don't think, but like it could happen. Like, I don't know. And to counter argue the point, I don't think they should play Bocage, but like as bad as like Neptune looked on Gavutu the other day, like I just don't like. Do you just let them battle it out on Gavutu or on Bocage hardpoint? Like, do you just say screw it? Like, we haven't won a hardpoint. We're literally 0-12. We lose every hardpoint basically. like seriously, like it doesn't think about it. It really doesn't matter. Like, okay, we banned Gavutu, cool. We still don't have a winning record on any of the other 3 maps, and it like doesn't. You can trickle down effect. You can ban Tuscan. You can ban whatever. It really hasn't mattered. Right? Like we're not positive record on any map. We've yet to win a hardpoint. It's like. Do you just let, and like we saw Neptune's tweet, I want to play my game. If I know that kid, he definitely wants to play a Bocage hardpoint versus these guys. So I'm very interested to see. I mean, I agree with you. I'm just interested to see what New York does with these vetoes. Like, do we see them try and square up with Florida like we saw LAG do? And I'm sitting there with questions over my head, but it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. You get to a point as a team, and like we said, if we know a roster changes around the corner, you've yet to win a hard point. It's like, do you just say screw it, we're just gonna play whatever map we want to on the day? Like, really, like I genuinely don't know.
Me neither. So I still don't think you put. I mean, here's the thing though. Like, I'm thinking back to New York when they played Bocage at the kickoff, and Crim like fried.
That's
with an MP40.
That's what's in my head right now. That is literally what's in my head. I was like, you guys were playing it at the kickoff, and it was kind of working. Like, it's like,
but you just can't play Florida on that map, man.
I agree, but it's like it doesn't. You can't play them on any map based on stats. Think about it. Like, you literally haven't won a hard point. Like there hasn't been a single win in the league so far. So it's like, I don't know. Do you just square up and say, oh, we got Hydra and Neptune, and like you said, Krim was playing good with a sub? Do you just say screw it, let's play them on it and hope for the best? Like, we're basically guaranteed a map 1 loss. Might as well see if we can get hot. I don't know.
I think it's if I were to put a wager down on it, I would say that the hard points we get are Gavutu Tuscan.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Tuscan is probably going to be about a 10 to 15 point game, and I think Gavutu is going to be about a 100-point game. I just don't know who to call it for because both teams are so atrocious at Gavutu. I don't know. I think it'll be interesting because for Florida, they don't really like hard veto out Berlin. It's just nobody really picks it versus them. So we haven't seen them play that map yet. And I don't see New York necessarily picking Berlin. I don't know. I think that in terms of how the hardpoint map selection is going to go, I favor Florida, not just because of the easy John Madden call that New York hasn't won a hardpoint yet, but I think as far as a map pool is concerned, I don't think you can play Florida on Bocage. We know New York doesn't like Berlin, rightfully so. They know they don't like Gavutu. Like, their only real option is to win the Tuscan. So I think that at best, these hard points go split 1-1. I think Florida probably takes both, though. Again, I hate to say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I unfortunately have to agree here. I want to say, like, and put up an argument point for New York, but they've just given me no reason to do so. I really don't see a light at the end of the tunnel for these guys. Like I said, I think if I know these guys, there's a roster change in the back of the head. It doesn't matter how this series goes. I think Florida is the better team right now. I just view New York so low, and no matter how kind of hairy the series goes, I'm going Florida here. I'll give New York a map. I think it has to be game 2 or 3, though. I don't see them winning a hard point here versus this team, and I think, honestly, they may get slammed again, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm also going to give New York a map. I'm going to give them control. I think that's the only way that they do it. The interesting thing about this, though, is depending on how the coin flip falls, like, Florida loves Tuscan control, New York loves Gavutu control, and they each oppositely hate the opposite map. So I think this very well could potentially still exist to be a 3-0. I think it also depends on what kind of a search and destroy map that we get, because we've seen kind of polar opposite colors with New York, where they've looked really solid on a couple of instances of Bocage or Tuscan, but then they've gotten blown out in the past on maps like Berlin and Desert Siege. So I just think the map pool is just not there. The only way I think New York really comes into the series and makes it competitive is if Hydra backpacks the crap out of this, or if there's something that just clicks for Crim and Clay on a double AR setup somewhere. I'm not high on Neptune outside of what he does in the search. I think Florida really turned a leaf with Vivid really kind of figuring things out, not just in his participation, but I think just how tempo-wise he's playing alongside someone like Skies and Awakening. That was much improved for Florida. So, yeah, I've got the same. I got Florida 3-1.
Yep, and that match will, like I said, it'll continue to be interesting. I'm so excited to see kind of how it plays out as the match goes on. But that will take us into our marquee match, the best match of the day, 100 Thieves versus Optic Texas. Talk to me, Alan. Talk to me. What do we think? We're gonna get a LA Thieves that we got yesterday, or are we gonna get a newly formed team? 24 hours, they get a good night rest and some good food today, and they're gonna be a different roster.
Do you want the short explanation or the long explanation here, Jerry?
Give me whatever you want. I would love to hear it.
Here's the short explanation. LA Thieves are going to come out much improved, but it's not going to make a difference. I think this Optic team, I mean, here, dude, the thing about it is, whatever. When it comes down to their win streak on Control right now, which is unbelievable, sure, there's something to be said there about Optic. Love that. You talk about also some big blowout wins that they've had on Hardpoint, and you sit there and say, damn, this Optic team is crazy. Mm-hmm. The most exciting thing about this Texas squad right now, though, is the search and destroy. To go 15 search rounds in a row on completely opposite style maps says so much about the promise of this roster. So I think when it comes down to it, as much as we would love to sit and see LA Thieves improved on the hard points and the respawns in general compared to yesterday, I don't know if it'll make a difference, simply due to the fact that this Texas team is just as good in the respawn, and I think they're heads and heels better than what LA Thieves are going to put together, especially on the Control, and of course also with that, the search. I feel really good about Optic's chances of coming out and starting the stage off with a dub.
Yeah, I honestly have to completely agree with you. I wish there was an arguing point for LA Thieves here in this series, but I think that they will come out. They're going to play better. They're going to make it a competitive series. It's going to be a back and forth one. Whenever you get two powerhouse teams going against each other, you know that they're going to show out. It's going to be a really good one. But I just think that if I know anything about competing, and from my days, whenever you come off of a major championship win like that and you come back home and you get back into these league matches, you just play with some sort of swagger and confidence that you can't replicate. And I just don't see these guys losing. Optic Texas looks so damn good in the major. They literally were the best formed Optic that I've seen from these guys this entirety of the year. Dashy looks in form. The guy's making heads up, great plays all around. He looks like a fundamentally sound MVP AR. Like, I've never seen this guy look as good as he has right now. Illy in that finals was the MVP of the series, quite possibly the best series he's ever played in his entire career. You got Shotzzy. The kid is literally different. His POV looks like a movie when you're watching it, and Seth's been doing his thing, dropping crazy numbers. So, I don't know. I'm just high on this Optic team right now until they give me a reason to not respect them and give them the gas that they deserve. I got to give it to them. I think LA Thieves could make this series, like I said, competitive and maybe take a map and have some close ones. But overall, dude, like you said, Optic's looking good across all the board, whatever map it is, mode it is, it doesn't matter. The only thing I'm curious to see here is we've seen them play Tuscan Control a lot, and that was Dashy's kind of playground. So based on, again, the coin flip, kind of how that goes, I'll be interested to see them on Gavutu. But again, I just brings me back to the finals. I know. But the only reason I say that is, like, we saw Faze make them look vulnerable at times, and I don't want to get into that whole debate about the lag and everything like that. But you could argue there's a loss there. For sure. So I don't know. I think, again, though, this Optic team looks so good. They handle business at the major. They look really good in search and destroy, and all their players are playing at the top of their game. I got them winning this series 3-1. I think they're going to handle business and get the job done.
Yeah, so I think the interesting thing about this series is, again, down to what does LA Thieves want to take off the table? Because I think everyone is pretty much fully aware that Optic has one of the most deep map pools right now with success across the league. And I think it starts first and foremost with what's going to happen in the hard point, because both teams have pretty hard set vetoes when it comes to the search and destroys. Optic hates playing Desert Siege. LA Thieves hates playing Tuscan. So if we get a Berlin Bocage search, that's already great news for Optic comparatively. I think just watching their 6-0 versus London on Bocage search is indicative enough about, even though there's a low sample size, they very much so understand how they want to play that map. And then we've seen them play Berlin more than enough times to know how that advantage is going to look. The interesting thing will be, what does Thieves want to take away on the hard point in particular? Because both teams really enjoy playing Tuscan. So I think that you're going to see that in the pool, and that's going to be a really competitive map. But for LA Thieves, I don't think you want to play this Optic team on Bocage. So does that mean that you're going to have to reprove yourself back on Gavutu again? Like, it'll be really interesting, I think, to see what Thieves opts to play hardpoint-wise against this Optic team.
I could be wrong, but is LA Thieves auto veto not Bocage hardpoint? I don't think I've seen them play it, I want to say, but
they played it almost exclusively in the Major 1 qualifiers, and didn't play it at all in Texas.
Yeah, that's kind of the way I see it with this roster. I feel like you kind of avoid that in this series. I could see them scoring up on Gavutu again. These guys were tweeting about it all weekend long at the Major. I don't care if they've gotten a few losses. They're like, don't play us on Gavutu, whatever. There's no way If they back down and ban that map versus his Optic team, that says something about this roster. Like you literally can't. You've been tweeting out, there's memes, there's everything about it. If you go in there and ban a Gavutu hardpoint, it's like, okay, well, we honestly got absolutely fried out the last 2 times, so we're scared to play. Like, there's no way. I think they veto Bocage. I think Optic vetoes Gavutu, and then we kind of see a Tuscan Berlin hardpoints. But I don't know, unless maybe people are feeling weird and want to get weird and like kind of change up the maps. Unless Optic again wants to square up on the map. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it kind of plays out.
I could see a world where I think Thieves would probably not want to play Bocage against Texas because they are the second best Bocage team in the game comparatively to Atlanta. Tuscan, both teams are really good at it, so we're going to get probably a 5-point affair there.
Yep.
And then it just comes down to, does Optic want to play Gavutu against this LA Thieves team, or do you want to go to Berlin where you actually have not recorded a win yet? I don't think it makes too much of a difference. I know you said 3-1 Texas. I'm also going 3-1 Texas as well. So we actually have the exact same picks with the exact same map scores going into today, which I'm pumped about because day one, I thought we were going to be like opposite mode the entire way through.
Well, I feel like we kind of talked about, it's like you get to this point in the year where it's like a lot of this stuff starts kind of getting ironed out, and this could go into, we could do a power ranking sometimes and kind of see where we've based stuff. But cool. I feel like you see and start to get an understanding of like what the team actually is. Like I don't care if it's Vanguard, I don't care what it is. Like you start to understand like, all right, this is what we're gonna get from this roster. Like these guys don't look good, and these teams are just the better teams. And I feel like when you get to the point when you talk about like your top 2, top 3, top 4 teams, they usually don't lose to like the middle of pack or the bottom teams. You can make a case and argument here and there, but like, I don't know. I think that this Optic team has, like I said, looked really, really good. And until they give me a reason to not trust them and like have faith in them, I just have to go with them right now in this series.
Yeah, I agree. I hope, and I think the way that LA Thieves win this series, by the way, is Draza coming out and showing that potential all-star performance that we've seen from him time and time again at different moments in time, not just in this title, but also from the last really 2 years. Mm-hmm. So I think if LA Thieves were to find a way to win this series, it's not necessarily just dictated on the maps, because I think the pools are going to be pretty similar, especially when it comes to the hard points. But I think a lot of this series will rely on Draza coming out and erasing what he did yesterday or what he didn't do yesterday versus London away from his mind, come through, be the player that you know you are. Consistency, high tier results that we've seen from Thieves have largely come by way of Draza. So I think if Draza comes out and has a hell of a series, I think there is an opportunity for Thieves to keep this not just tight, but they very well could upset here. But I don't know. This Optic team is just looking too good right now. Yeah,
that's exactly where I'm at. I'm not saying that LA Thieves couldn't upset them or couldn't beat them. We've seen them do it at the kickoff, and they easily could in this series. I just, like I said, I'm so high on Optic right now. I got these guys taking this series. That will kind of wrap up the predictions on the day and kind of discussing some of the matches. I don't know if you want to continue to just take a few chat questions, and then we'll kind of wrap this thing up. So chat, if you guys are watching it with us live or watching on YouTube, we basically take questions live on the Twitch channel over here at twitch.tv/Slack during the show. If you guys have any questions or anything you guys would like us to kind of take a deeper dive into, or maybe something we didn't hit, then we can kind of go through it and maybe explain our opinions or different takes on it. And we will kind of go from there. So we'll wrap the show up with, like I said, put some questions in the chat. We'll go ahead and answer those.
What are your thoughts on, while we're getting a couple of questions through, what are your thoughts on Envoy this year?
So he started off really slow for at the kickoff, at least. Like, he didn't look good in that Optic series, and I was kind of like, oh, that was weird. And then as the year started going on, he started to fry and kind of getting that mojo, that groove. And then at the major, I thought he was doing his thing. He looked really good in some of the series.
Really good at the major.
I don't know. He's just this LA Thieves team in general, like his role on this team, it's kind of like weird to me. Like, you don't have, like, you can argue Draza's their like superstar sub, but like they don't really have like that, like, I don't know, that guy that's just like, oh, he is our guy on this team. That's kind of the way I view it. Like, sure. So I don't know. He's a really good player. He's really smart, and I feel like makes a lot of really good like rotational plays and heads up plays overall. But what about you?
Okay. It's just he feels like the one guy for the Thieves that really nobody's talking about, which is always surprising, because I feel like on the last handful of teams that he's been on, he's kind of been like the spotlighted players in certain ways. So I was just curious what your take was while we were waiting for questions.
Okay. I want to answer this one because we've kind of hinted at it. My boy Delato, something. I don't know what his name is, but it says, what makes this game so much harder for a Crim/Clay duo, for example, than previous COD titles? And we've kind of spoke about this one. I've kind of said it a little bit, but I think this goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the show. I think that teams, organizations, players, whatever it is, they come together before the game comes out, and the only thing they have to base it off of is the year prior. In Cold War, I think this team works. In Call of Duty Vanguard, absolutely. I don't think the team works. So they made this roster basically like, okay, if it's a 2AR setup on most of the maps, which it very well could be, depending on the maps that we are given. If these are bigger maps, you could argue that it'd be 2ARs on every map, but we have bow cage and some other maps. So I think that's the number one issue, that these teams do that, and it's like the only thing they really can do. But in this game specifically, the reason that it doesn't work is just simply pacing. I think that we've spoke about it a lot. This map, the maps that we are given and the modes, they're just super aggressive. They are very fast games that come down to a lot of engagements, a lot of kills, and for them to kind of make it work, they would honestly have to find a specific map pool that works for them and kind of veto out all the smaller maps and hope that they're good on the big ones. But that's kind of my take on it. I just think it's a pacing thing. I think they're both true ARs.
Yeah, so here's a take, and I might be just completely off the reservation, so call me an idiot if I'm speaking out of my ass. My biggest thing here is not just pacing, because I think we could even dissect this a little bit deeper. I think it's a combination of time to kill being as fast as it is, to where you don't really get any gunfights. Because last year, both of these main ARs did pretty well because you were actually in pretty extended gunfights, Krig v Krig. Mm-hmm. And then you go back to when the time to kill was like this. That was Modern Warfare, where it was 5v5. Mm-hmm. And I think just the ability to have 2 ARs rocking opposite sides of the map and just locking down lanes was much easier because of, like you mentioned, the bigger maps, but also the ability to have 3 subs in front of you, or at least 2 subs with kind of a modified short-ranged M4. I would be interested. I think this team needs a meta change, flat out. Like, I think it just needs to have a longer time to kill across the board, and I think that will help with the pacing problems that we've seen. But I mean, going back to Crim Clay, like as a duo, you don't have that extra lane to watch. You don't have the extra players in front of you to go do the dirty work. Because you think about that Dallas roster, I mean, you had 3 of the most cracked out subs in recent memory outside of Simp and Abizi all combined together. Mm-hmm. So I think there is something to be said about what that roster was at Dallas. I mean, obviously Illy playing more of a flex there, but I don't know. I think this game needs to be swapped up heavily in the meta if you want to see Crim and Clay back to what they were able to do in years prior, just because the time to kill is so fast, and because it's 4v4, putting extra pressure on the individuals to actually, be able to put an individual influence across the map from start to finish.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And something I want to make note too is, like, I don't think Crim or Clay are bad Call of Duty players at all. Obviously, their past stand for it. They would both be very successful on different rosters. And I promise you would see both of their individual performances go up if they were on different teams. In my opinion, the formula for this game, I've talked about it a lot. You have 2 hyper-aggressive SMG players. You got a flex who is perfectly fine pulling out an AR, or you can get the sub out and play uncomfortable, play aggressive, and take those gunfights that are a lot harder and play a lot more aggressive play style. And then you kind of got that slower AR. If you look at all the teams that have found success, your Phases, your Optics, your teams like that, even you can talk about Seattle building their roster kind of similar to like that Faze clan roster. So I don't know. I just think that is what is working in this game so far, and that's kind of like the formula for success so far. Again, I don't think either of them are bad Call of Duty players. I think they would just find a lot more success in this title specifically being split.
Yeah, that's fair. Did you come across any others? I really wasn't watching chat, I'm not gonna lie.
I wasn't. That was me the other day. Let me look.
Oh, here's a decent one. Ricky asked one, and actually this could be kind of combined with Haas's. So Ricky asked the question, is FaZe at risk of going 1-3 with the remaining 4 games being really tough? And maybe as a side question, Haas asked, do you guys feel that FaZe are struggling to understand the core fundamentals in this game, being that it's obviously very different than Cold War?
You want me to take this one first? You got it. You got it. You sound like you got an idea. Take it away.
I don't see this team going 1-3 the rest of the way through. I think that there's going to be some tight series. Obviously, I think everyone's looking that, okay, like Atlanta playing Florida, you favor Atlanta there, and then the rest of them could be possibly, toss-ups. I think Atlanta holds an edge versus Toronto, and I think that Atlanta-London game is actually going to be a really good one as well. Obviously, everyone's looking forward to FaZe Texas, the rematch at the end of week 3, but I don't see them only winning 1 of the remaining 4 games.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Faze is just too good of a team. They're gonna have slip ups here and there, but overall, I'm not worried about them at all. Like people were saying the same thing at the kickoff when they lost the first series. Oh my God, Sim dropped the .8. Is this guy gonna be the world's worst? Like no, they have like I still think the two best SMG players in the game. Celium's disgusting. Archie's is really good as well. Like they're gonna put it together. They're gonna be fine, and I think they'll definitely handle business as the stage goes on. Something I wanted to talk about, and I want to kind of get your take on this too, is
Sure.
Gianni asked, talk Boston, predictions for the rest of the stage, and are they a top
Ooh.
5/6 team? So this team, to me, I'll kind of set you up for this one. They are like, they remind me kind of like Florida in a way. I think that they're like that middle of the pack team. They could beat anyone, but sometimes you see a lot of player inconsistencies, and like, you can argue that that series would be stretched out even further. Like we saw the Boston Breach Seattle game. I know it's all what ifs, but like if Cap doesn't have that insane game, dropping 54 kills, like they're
They
map
probably lose
5,
that because,
and they
yeah,
could
for
lose
sure.
a game 5 there. Like we saw Seattle clutch up yesterday versus FaZe. So I just want to know kind of where you rank them and what you kind of think of this team, because they look great at times and they handle business versus like the lesser teams, but we haven't really seen them put up a crazy good performance for some of the top dogs in the league.
I think this Boston team is one game mode away from being a guaranteed top 6 team for the season.
Okay.
I think that there are some instances where we see struggles occur, but largely speaking, we've seen Boston, for the most part, win their map picks in almost every series that they've played. At least, right? Like that's, I think, been the biggest key, is that they're winning their picks. So they're coming out and they're prepping on the maps that they think that they're going to play versus teams pretty darn correctly. The biggest problem to that whole fundamental is the fact that they're just not doing very well in control. So I think if they can figure out control, get more comfortable, I think it's going to take, by the way, tick progression to come in before they really lock down control overall. I don't think that this TDM style of control favors this team.
Agreed.
I think once they get the opportunity to play for ticks on control, this team has the opportunity to make it to Sunday on a regular basis at major finals. Obviously, it's hard to say because there's only 4 majors, but I think that this team has got a very high ceiling, not just for this stage, but I think for the ceiling for the stage, for the season rather, overall. So I'm pretty high in this Boston team to be a contender from really here on out.
Yeah, no, I think you literally hit it perfectly. That's exactly what I was gonna say. And one other thing I'd like to state is like I'd like to see these guys start off playing some of the bigger hard points like we talked about. I love TJ and that AR role.
Yeah.
I think it just makes them seem more like, I don't know, just comfortable. Like they handle business. Like they played that Gavutu versus Seattle, and it didn't look like there wasn't a doubt in my mind that they weren't going to win that map. But then you go to the Bocage, and it's like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, slide cancel, chow, 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 chow. It's like this guy Capsule has to go for record-breaking numbers for them to win the map. Like you shouldn't be playing the map. I don't care what they say, what their stats show. It's like, I don't know. For me, it's like when you talk about consistency factors and things like that, it's like I want to see them off of that map. I just want to see TJ run the air. I just want to see how they do realistically on some of these maps. Not playing that every series. And then I think their searches look good, but for them to continue to be a top 5, top 6 team through the entirety of the year, they can't have a bad mode. Like you said, I think the ticks and control will definitely help them. And we will see what happens whenever they kind of transition that into this year. So hopefully they can get the control together.
Damn. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but Holy Water going hard on Major Maniac right now for the RØKKR. I think Major Maniac has been as good as he's ever been the last couple of years, since like Gen G, BO4. I think Major Maniac has been super solid. This is the first year after Modern Warfare and Cold War that I've looked at this play style that Major Maniac brings to the table. I think he really learned a lot in the short stint that he had at Challengers last year. I'm super high on Major Maniac stock for that Minnesota team right now.
Yeah, I think it's too early to like kind of say they make a change. The only thing I will add in is when Call of Duty has been like this way forever. You look at teams and you look at the players on the team and you look at who's replaceable. And unfortunately in COD, there's always that one guy that's the easy out. He's the easy person to kind of pick out and like swap out when things aren't going well. Like we could go through all the rosters and do it. And I think that he just unfortunately gets the short end of the stick as far as like, hey, if we're not winning, what do? You go drop your star and Standy, or you drop Priesta, and like Priesta probably goes to join another team and he makes them infinitely better right away, or you drop attack. Like, so like, I don't think they need to make a change. I think he's been playing really well, like you said, and he's kind of finding his footing with this roster. So I think you just got to give him some time. He's a really good search and destroy player. He's a great dude, really good teammate, and he brings a lot to the table as far as just being an overall great guy. So I don't think they need to make a change yet, but I guess we'll see what happens over the next few weeks with their matches and whatnot. Then we can kind of talk more seriously about them having to make a change or not.
I mean, they've got to perform with the schedule that they have. That's the biggest thing. If Minnesota continues to struggle through these qualifiers with the schedule that they have, then I think the scrutiny that we have the liberty of kind of putting out of the team is much more easily debatable at that point. I think for right now, you got to give this role swap a chance. And I don't think the problems are on opposite ends of the spectrums. I don't think Major Maniac's the problem. I don't think Standy's the problem. I think there has to be a logistical kind of figuring out of what's going on in the middle between Priest and Attach. And I think that what we saw yesterday is already showing improvement in that department. So I don't know. I'm pretty high on this Minnesota team.
I like it. And one of the last ones I saw, I guess I got two more. This was from Universal Struggle. He said, do you agree with the Aches talk or take he had on the flank last night that Seattle doesn't have the cohesion to be a great team and the win against Faze doesn't prove anything? Talk to me, Alan. Talk to me.
It's a hot, spicy take. I don't agree with it, but I could see where you could make that argument. I'm trying to find the words that I want to like use to maybe even even debate it on one side or the other. I think that the win versus Atlanta does not alleviate all the questions. I think it does help the fact that, okay, Seattle is understanding where their problems lie and how they can kind of, make their bed before they die in it in a certain way. The thing about it is really for me, what we saw yesterday, is that going to stay consistent, right? I think that's the biggest thing. And I think that's where you look at the take and say, well, maybe there is some inconsistent issues to where you're going to sneak away a win every now and again. It might be versus some big teams, but I can see where the argument could be coming from. We're saying like, hey, out of the course of the last 3 weeks, we have seen more inconsistencies than successful consistencies. I think it's a little bit too bold of a take. I don't think that the Atlanta win essentially goes out there and alleviates all of your questions, but I do think it shows that the Seattle team can figure things out. So I don't know. I see both sides of it. I would lean more towards the opposite of Ake's take, though, personally.
Okay. I'll go opposite from you. I think I said this yesterday. I think like without the kickoff, if the kickoff never happens, it's never the single elimination tournament, and Seattle Surge doesn't make it all the way to the finals. If you eliminate that, and you take their record so far and then their bomb out of Major 1, I don't think they've looked good at all. You could argue that they've beaten Faze, but imagine they never beat them the first time. They're what would their record be? 1-6, something like that. Or no, not 1-6. What am I saying? They've won a few series. They won two.
Their first week of the quals, they did really well. It was a couple of map 5.
They went 2-3, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they went 2-3, and then they come in here, so now they're 3 and. No,
they went 3-2 in the qualifiers.
Oh, 3-2. Oh yeah, because they beat Minnesota round 11, right? That was with Lamar 1v2 clutch. Yep. Okay, yep. So now it's all coming back to me. So I don't know. You could argue both sides. I think that a lot of people started like roasting this team when they bombed out of the major, right? They lost to Faze early, or was it Faze or Optic? No, they lost to Optic early on, and then they lose to the Paris Legion team. But I don't know. Like we said yesterday, they just got to turn it around right now. They don't have the easiest of schedules coming up, so we'll really get to see kind of what this team can do when they're put to the test against some of these top dog rosters. So I don't know.
I don't know. For me, I look largely at like their map differentials, like as far as what their average scores are. Like on average, they're only losing hard points if they do lose them by about 15 points, which is the definition of as close as it could possibly get.
Oh, that comes down to literally play, like one play sometimes.
It's literally one decision, one play. Like there was, I don't know, man. I think that a lot of the losses that we've seen from Seattle have been very narrow. So I don't really feel like, there's been a lot of obviously power rankings conversations and people are instantly throwing Seattle down to the bottom. But, I get it. The loss versus Florida and the loss versus Paris are obviously pretty embarrassing just by who you lost to, considering the regard that we held them in. But I still think the Seattle team is at least top 8, if not threatening top 6, no problem.
Okay. I guess the last question I'll have for you before we kind of wrap this whole thing up is I'm genuinely curious. We can do a power ranking sometimes on this show.
Okay.
But if you had to choose who's your bottom 4 right now from 12th to 9th, I guess.
In order?
In order, yeah. I want to know, or you can do your 9 through 12. It doesn't matter, but whatever way you want to do.
I'll go from the bottom up. So I have New York 12. I've got Paris 11. I've got LAG 10.
Okay.
And then 9, I think, is a toss-up, and I think it just comes down to what do we see. I might be able to get the answer today. Like, it's between Minnesota and Florida for me for 9. I've got Seattle in the 8 spot or 7 spot, depending on those two teams, I think.
Okay, cool. I like it. Yeah, I just wanted to get your kind of take on that and see where you had these teams at. It's so interesting to me as the league goes on. You see a team perform so well, and then one week they could just completely bomb out, and now people put them so down bad. It's hilarious, honestly. Seeing how they can either go so high up on the rankings or just all the way to the bottom. Yeah. But I think that will kind of do it for...
What are your bottom 4? Wait a second.
All right. Bottom 4, I got New York is number 12. They're the worst team right now in the league. I think after yesterday, this would have been different, but I have the Paris Legion at 11. Then at 10, I think I got... I want to say I got... I want to say I got LAG there, then Seattle. I think that Minnesota will put it together as time goes on, and I think they're less chalked in terms of like what they can do. I think they at the major they handle business versus LAG, so that's why I have LAG down below there. Then LAG's only really handled business versus Paris so far in this stage of the qualifiers. So we'll kind of get to learn more about these teams as time goes on, but I think unless you got any final thoughts, we can kind of wrap this bad boy up. It was an absolute blast doing the First Blood podcast with my boy Alan. This was kind of our first week. This was literally our 3rd episode ever. So if you guys have been enjoying the content so far and the podcast, please do me a favor and follow the stream. We're live every single day, like I said, at 12 o'clock Central, 2 hours before, doing a little pre-show, kind of breaking down some different things. And as time goes on, we're going to be able to do a lot more enjoyable things, as whether it's predictions and making it fun between him and I, or kind of dissecting certain plays. So if you guys have anything that you guys want to see from us, put them in the YouTube comments or come into our streams or message us on Twitter, whatever it is, and kind of let us know what you guys like to see. Shout out to Alan. He's the absolute GOAT. Go show him some love on social media, guys. He's a really hard worker. He literally works nonstop for Call of Duty, whether it's challengers, whether it's CDL stuff, whatever it is, casting, he does it all. He's a great guy with a great opinion on Call of Duty. So go show him some love. His Twitter handle is right below his name under his webcam. And yeah, most importantly, if you guys are enjoying, like I said, just to make sure to go show us some love on social media. So we really do appreciate it. We're going to try and get some players on and get some different takes and views as time goes on, kind of get a player perspective or maybe some top challengers, guys. So we appreciate it. Make sure to, like I said, follow us, subscribe, all that good stuff. And until next week's episode, we will be back for another First Blood episode on Friday, I think is when the matches start again. Friday at 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. And he'll be streaming. I'll be streaming throughout the week. So go engage, go show some love. And until the next one, guys, we will catch you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Peace.